All right. Good morning, guys. This is Dr. Vivashwan, and today we'll be discussing about the development of the diaphragm. So, coming to diaphragm, what is a diaphragm? Actually, diaphragm means something, any separation between two anatomically different regions. We have diaphragm like thoraco-abdominal diaphragm. That's what diaphragm basically means. But there are other diaphragms like the urogenital diaphragm present in the pelvic area, the perineal area, to be more appropriate. And even we have the some other areas in the mylohyoid line. There will be mylohyoid muscle attached. That will be like the buccal diaphragm. So it's like diaphragm is a very broad term, but basically diaphragm refers to the thoraco-abdominal diaphragm. Coming to the development part, so diaphragm actually developmentally development wise, diaphragm is developed from the following parts. Primarily, first I would like to explain the structures of the diaphragm. The diaphragm, we have a central tendon. The central tendon is the part which is present exactly at the center of the muscular diaphragm. It's a musculo-aponeurotic structure to which the diaphragm get inserted. So the diaphragm has its origin from all around. It has a circumferential origin. Anteriorly, it has its origin from the sternum and the lower 6 ribs on the laterally, and posteriorly it has its origin from the lumbar, the T12 or the lumbar, the anterior process of the body of the lumbar vertebra. So all the circumferential origin, if you imagine these, the sternum and the lower 6 ribs circumferentially and posteriorly the anterior surface of the lumbar vertebra, circumferentially it has its origin, and all these things will be getting inserted into the central tendon of the diaphragm. So that, first of all, that central tendon of the diaphragm is actually developed from a structure which is called a septum transverse embryology. Septum tendon. So this central tendon has its development from a structure, it's called a septum transversum. Septum transversum. So the septum transversum is actually the area which can be seen during the embryologically developing conditions. Adult, I think that will be adult. It will be giving its appearance to the central tendon. So to this central tendon, we have an opening. So the opening into the central tendon, it actually, the inferior vena cava pierces this central tendon of the diaphragm. So apart from the central tendon, there are some other structures. The other structures of the diaphragm are also there. We have the right crus and the left crus of the diaphragm. The right and left crus of the diaphragm. So this right and left crus of the diaphragm, they have been developed from the dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. Actually, mesentery is something like a fold of peritoneum, which is holding the GIT, which is suspending the GIT so that it will be stabilized inside the abdominal cavity. That is nothing but the mesentery. So the mesentery, which is holding the esophagus part of the GIT, this particular thing will be mesentery. This particular thing will be giving rise to the right and the left crus of the diaphragm, which is developed from the esophagus mesentery. And we have apart from these two parts, we have two other parts of the diaphragm, that is the small peripheral portion and the large peripheral portion. Small peripheral portion, one more is the large peripheral portion. So this small peripheral portion, which is developed from the pleuroperitoneal membranes. Small peripheral portion is the pleuroperitoneal pleuroperitoneal membranes, they will be like, they are from the either side of they're bilateral. Both the pleuroperitoneal membranes on either side, they'll form the small peripheral portion, while the large peripheral portion of the diaphragm, that will actually be developed by the mesoderm, somatic mesoderm. Somatic mesoderm, and this somatic mesoderm will actually, during the embryological part, we have something called as cervical somates. Cervical somates are the things which give rise to muscular structures which are present in the cervical area. The cervical somates, during the process of development, they will be descended down. So during this process of descent, they carry their nerves supplying to them. You know that C3, C4 and C5, these three units, they will form the phrenic nerve. So this phrenic nerve is actually, it's from C3, C4, C5. That clearly indicates that it developmentally, the diaphragm is in the cervical region, but during the process of development, it will be getting, because of this formation of the head and tail folds and all these things, this area will be moved downwards. And so look at the diagram during the embryo. There will be something called as cardiogenic area and the septum transversum, these different area will be there. So because of this formation of these areas, ultimately, the diaphragm will be descending from the cervical area, which has its origin from the cervical somatis diaphragm. Now it will be dependent to the the thoraco-abdominal region. It forms the muscular separation between the thorax and the abdomen. So coming to the pleuroperitoneal membranes. The pleuroperitoneal membranes, they will be on each side. These pleuroperitoneal membranes will fuse to each other, form the small peripheral part, and we have an applied aspect, important applied anatomical aspect here. It is nothing but, it is called as congenital diaphragmatic hernia. So, congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Congenital diaphragmatic hernia, we have two types of the diaphragmatic hernia, basically. Those are, one is the Bogdalek's hernia, another one is the Morgangian hernia. So Bogdalek hernia is nothing but if the Bogdalek hernia is left posterolateral. Bogdalek hernia is something which is happening on the left side and the posterior and the lateral aspect. So Bogdalek's. Bogdalek's hernia is happening on the left posterior lateral aspect. The pleuroperitoneal membrane, which is the left-sided pleuroperitoneal membrane, if it's failed to fuse, at that particular area, it will leave a portion of a void, a portion or an empty triangular space that is called as Bogdalek's triangle. And if at all herniation takes place through this Bogdalek's triangle, that is called as Bogdalek's hernia. So what are all the structures? So if it is present on the left side, so what are all the structures which are possibly be herniating from the abdominal cavity into the thoracic cavity? It is there on the left side. So usually the left-sided part of the column are some coils of ileum, and if at all if it is any viscera, that will be the spleen which will be herniating from the abdomen into the thoracic cavity. So basically, Bogdalek's triangle, the Bogdalek's hernia, the child, in this child it is actually. The child will be presenting to the pediatrician with complaints of shortness of breath. They will present with Bogdalek's hernia. Bogdalek's hernia, the child will be presenting with clinical features of shortness of breath. As soon as we notice shortness of breath, it will be very severe shortness of breath, and usually the people will try to give something called as a bag and mask ventilation, but that thing is absolutely contraindicated in case of the Bogdalek's hernia, because that would even lead to rupture, because already the lungs are, the respiratory distress itself occurs because the coils of the intestine, they will be actually herniating, so there will be no enough room for the lungs to just expand it. If you give bag and mask, you are forcefully making the lungs to expand against an resistance that will lead to barotrauma, and that is absolutely contraindicated in case of this Bogdalek hernia. Bag and mask ventilation is contraindicated in Bogdalek's hernia. Death occurs in Bogdalek's hernia. The most common cause of death is because of the respiratory distress. And before this, I would like to say about unusual scaphoid abdomen. Unusual scaphoid abdomen. So, usually in the infants or in the neonates, the abdomen will be more or less like a scaphoid. But here, as the abdominal contents, they have got herniated into the thorax. There will be an extreme deep concavity. So it is not just a normal scaphoid, it's an abnormal scaphoid thing which is there in the abdomen. And that is the reason. That is the reason for the typical appearance of this. Okay, that's appearance. And even if you have taken a chest X-ray, we can even notice the presence of this loops of the coils of the ileum, all these things on the left side of the aspect of the chest X-ray. So that's about the posterolateral. We have one more hernia. If the left side of pleuroperitoneal membrane fails, then it results in Bogdalek's hernia. Well, we have one more right-sided diaphragmatic hernia, congenital diaphragmatic hernia. First thing is the Bogdalek's hernia, and second thing we have one more hernia. This is called as the Morganian hernia. Morganian hernia. So Bogdalek's hernia, it's the left posterolateral aspect of the diaphragm. There will be a empty space. There will be the failed pleuroperitoneal membrane that leads to a room for the herniation. While this Morganian hernia is completely opposite. It is left, posterior and lateral. While Morganian is right, anterior and medial. Simply we can say it as a retrosternal also. Retrosternal also, to some extent, right retrosternal will be more appropriate. So Bogdalek's hernia will be left posterolateral, Morganian hernia will be right anterior medial. So if the same right-sided pleuroperitoneal membrane is defective, then actually the herniation will be actually the next best, second most common the second most common diaphragmatic hernia will be on the right side. So on the right side, it will be like a right anteromedial or simply retrosternal. This particular hernia is called as the Morganian hernia. So we have discussed about the central tendon of the diaphragm. Central tendon of the diaphragm is developed from the septum transversum, I said it already. And we have discussed even about the pleuroperitoneal membranes and the applied aspect like congenital diaphragmatic hernia, which includes Bogdalek's hernia as well as Morganian hernia. There is one more thing, one more part of the diaphragm. There are the left and the right crus of the diaphragm. So this left and right crus of the diaphragm, I said the esophagus, so the dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. Dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. And last, we have the central tendon, we have the pleuroperitoneal membrane develops, and this is the small peripheral part, and we have even the large peripheral part. This large peripheral part is developed from the mesoderm, the lateral wall mesoderm. Large peripheral part will be developed from the lateral wall mesoderm. So this lateral wall mesoderm, I said this is from the cervical somitis. Cervical somitis descent, and the cervical somitis is nothing but some mesoderm in the cervical area. They will descend and they form the lateral wall mesoderm. From the lateral wall mesoderm, the lateral peripheral part will be formed, and this is what which is responsible for during the inhalation, the vertical diameter of the thoracic cavity will be increased because of the contraction of the musculature present in this lateral peripheral part, which is developed from the lateral wall mesoderm, which is internally developed from the cervical somites. Cervical somites of C3, C4 and C5 levels. So we can correlate it, like this particular part is supplied by the phrenic nerve. The root value of the phrenic nerve is C3, C4 and C5. So that's clear that the descent has happened from the cervical region. The nerve supply is even, you can correlate embryologically as well as the gross anatomy wise. It's both are satisfying each other. And this is all about the development of the diaphragm. The major important aspects have got it. I'll just try to give you a diagrammatic view of all these things. sternum. And here at the bottom we have the vertebrae, the bar vertebrae. And even developmentally we have something called as a central tendon. The central tendon on which the heart, the inferior surface or the diaphragmatic surface of the heart is placed on this, the central tendon, which is developed from the septum transversum. And we have the large peripheral part, the large peripheral part on either sides. This large peripheral part on either sides, it's developed from the lateral wall mesoderm. And one more thing is this particular area in between these things will be forming the small peripheral part. This small peripheral part, the sternum, the small peripheral part will actually be developing from the, a small peripheral part will be developing from the pleuroperitoneal membranes. This small peripheral part will be developing from the pleuroperitoneal membranes. And we even have one more structure left, and that is the right crus as well as the left crus. It's just a vague diagram, not an artistic diagram, and we are trying to give you the schematic representation. The diagrams are available in the embryological texts. The right crus of the diaphragm and the left crus of the diaphragm. The right crus of the diaphragm has both of these crus has their development from the dorsal mesentery of oesophagus. Dorsal mesentery of the oesophagus. So this is how a small view of how the diaphragm will be developing. Now we'll try to little bit study about the openings inside the diaphragm. That's important. Not only gross anatomy but also embryological point of view. The openings inside the diaphragm are of quite importance. So we have different openings. Major openings we have at T8 level, T10 level, and one more at T12 level. So what is the opening which is present at the T8 level? The opening at the T8 level, it is called as vena caval opening. The venal caval opening at the T8 level is actually present. It is actually the central tendon. The inferior vena cava pierces the central tendon, and from here it goes into thoracic cavity and it enters into the right atrium of the heart, guarded by the valve of eustachian. One more is at the T10 level. At the T10 level, we have one more called as the oesophageal opening. Oesophageal opening. At the T12 level, in between the right crus and the left crus of the diaphragm, that will be the T12 opening. This is called as aortic opening or aortic hiatus. So these three are the major openings in the diaphragm, and we have even some minor openings through which the foramen of Morgagni, there is something called as foramen of Morgagni. I have said to you the Morganian area, the inferior epigastric artery, which is nothing but the branch of the external iliac artery. External iliac artery, after crossing the level of the inguinal ligament, that will be continuing as the femoral artery. External inguinal artery above the level of inguinal ligament, that gives rise to a branch called as inferior epigastric artery. And from here, in the internal thoracic, the first part of the subclavian artery has got three parts: vertebral, internal thoracic, and thyrocervical trunk. And the internal thoracic artery will be going to, the course will be like, it will be going the parasternally vertically here, and there in the almost at the sixth intercostal space, it will be bifurcating into two branches. They are the musculophrenic artery. Medially it gives us to musculophrenic artery, and inferiorly it continues as the superior epigastric artery, and superior epigastric artery, inferior epigastric artery. They will be getting anastomosis in the posterior wall of the rectus sheath. That's all the gross anatomy. But how the superior epigastric artery, which is present in thorax, how can it enter into the diaphragm is to this foramen of the Morgagni. And one more thing is the aortic hiatus. So we have said to you about the openings, the major openings, and let us see about the contents. So vena caval opening consists of contents will be inferior vena cava and even some branches of the right, Now the advance of the inferior will be present in the vena cava opening. Coming to esophageal opening. Esophageal opening, we have vagus. We have right vagus and the left vagus. Right and left vagus, after entering into the thoracic cavity, they will be changing their course. The right vagus will be entering posterior, it's called as posterior vagus, and the left vagus will be entering anterior, it's called as anterior vagus. They form something called as esophageal plexus beneath the esophagus, but they have to go down from the thorax into the abdomen. They will go down and supply to the abdominal viscera, I mean the small intestine, the large intestine, the stomach. We have the nerve of Latarjet, all those things. They have to go after piercing the diaphragm. From which part of the diaphragm they entering from the thorax into the abdomen? That is through this esophageal opening, the vagus. Simply vagus. And next thing is the aortic hiatus. Aortic hiatus, there is something called as thoracic duct. Thoracic duct actually associated with the lymphatic drainage from the the lower part. The lower, except the left arm and the head and neck part. Rest of all the body is the lymphatic drainage of the rest of all the body except the arm and as well as the head and neck, that will be associated with something called as the thoracic duct. And the thoracic duct will be entering from the thorax into the abdomen. They will be collecting the lymphatic drainage from the lower part. So they enter from the abdomen into the thorax through this aortic hiatus. So one more content of aortic hiatus, apart from abdominal aorta, we have a thoracic duct. Then I would like to concentrate on two very neglected contents of this esophagus. We have something called as, assuming this as the vertebra, the right, we have something called as the right crus of the diaphragm. Here is the right crus of the diaphragm as well as the left crus of the diaphragm. So the right crus of the diaphragm, it will be pierced by a structure called as the right hemiazygous vein, while the left crus of the diaphragm, it will be pierced by the hemiazygous. Sorry, this is right azygous vein. The right crus will be pierced by the right azygous vein, while the left crus will be pierced by the hemiazygous vein. So this is how the development of the diaphragm, and what are all the openings inside the diaphragm, what are the applied aspects, developmental, which are related to the diaphragm, and small note about the openings and even the contents. So although gross anatomy topics for gross anatomy point of view was not discussed, it was a bit like more related to embryology and the openings, and as well as the developmental anomalies which are related to the diaphragm. Thank you very much. This is the end of the session.